It's been a long time since MMOs have been at their peak, since we've had any new ideas or fresh concepts, or any weird worlds to explore. And you can understand why. I mean, MMOs are some of the most expensive to create genres of games. They take a ridiculous amount of time to even develop in the first place. They seem like a big gamble to make. But despite that, we are actually starting to enter a new age for MMOs again. New ideas are coming through, new playstyles, new ways to tell a story, new versions of what endgame can be. Finally, WoW has fallen from its high tower, and with that, it seems a mass exodus has taken place, the desire for fresh MMOs being high. Look how desperately people played New World despite how god unfinished that game was. And as I said, MMOs take a long time to create, but there's been a few big ones in development for years already that we've had betas for, releases to get the ball rolling in some cases. You know, things are actually looking good. While Final Fantasy XIV is an absolute blast, and I strongly recommend it as perhaps the best MMO you can play right now, today we're taking a look at what's coming in the new year. So welcome back to Rage Gaming, my name is Hollow, and these are the 5 MMOs either releasing in 2022 or getting a major update we're excited for. Let's start with the obvious one then, Lost Ark. I think it's fair to say that we as a channel are excited for Lost Ark since I've been covering the game's news for over a year and we all went mad with the recent beta. Lost Ark is the extremely popular Korean MMO that features some of the best combat and class design I've ever played. It released over 3 years ago in Korea and is still one of their most played games today. Going on to release in other regions like Japan and Russia, well finally, we're getting our Western launch very soon in early February. But why are we even excited for the game? This is a pretty unique and untapped style of MMO. It's an ARPG played from an isometric camera rather than moving around with like WASD. You're clicking to move like RuneScape, but a lot smoother than that. Imagine Diablo or Path of Exile, but as an MMO. Easier to pick up and play long term though, with builds and progressions that are simplified to give you a few options with each class for various PvP builds and PvE builds. I say this is an untapped style of MMO because it truly is. It's one of the few MMORPGs of its nature you can play today. You can create crazy spectacles with clever level design and camera usage with this style of game, and that is certainly what they do in their dungeons. You can bombard the player with enemies to cleave through with comical levels of enemies you don't see in your average MMO, and they do that too. You can have a massive list of classes and playstyles and designs. There's something like 20 different classes in the game in the Korean version right now, and while yet we're starting with 15, they've picked a nice selection for each main archetype to start with, and then of course we can expect the rest in following updates. But then we've actually got an MMO here as well as all that. It's a big world to explore how you want. You got social elements to enjoy, whether you're raiding or doing PvP. There's the economy or competition. When it comes to the PvE, they've got challenging dungeons to take down together, massive raids. All the PvP I found solid. I haven't enjoyed PvP in an MMO in quite some time. I was worried because the way the game works, I couldn't imagine like 5 people just smashing into each other spamming abilities being very fun, which is why their main mode sets up the players in more skill-based 1v1 elimination. You watch as the first 2 players fight and the winner then progresses into the next fight with whatever health and resources they've got left over. Technically with enough skill you can win all 3 1v1s back to back with incredible play, but more likely you're going to try wound your enemy before you fall in that second fight to give your team the best chance. The detail of this spectator mode was ridiculous. There's a clear effort to make this mode one legit. I could talk your ear off about the cool details of Lost Ark though, how they've done a lot more than just cool combat and some interesting classes, but that's not this video. To me, Lost Ark felt completely different to any MMO I've ever played, and I think it felt good. And that's what I mean when I say golden age for MMOs. Something that challenges the formula and does it well. Alright, so that's Lost Ark. Let's move on to something different. Let's talk about an expansion, the Legacy of the Sith. This is the upcoming expansion to Star Wars: The Old Republic, or SWTOR for short. SWTOR is admittedly an older MMO. It came out 10 years ago. A more classic and generic MMO in its combat and class design. You have your hotbar abilities with some nice animations and classes that can choose between 2 advanced classes to then main from level 10. Where it's special is the world, the universe you're playing in. It's Star Wars done right. The story is incredible. If it wasn't for Final Fantasy XIV, I'd be telling you that SWTOR has the best MMO story on the market right now. Each class gets its own unique storyline, their own ship, their own companions to meet. But then, yeah, on top of all of that, it is an MMO with worlds to go travel to, with dungeons, raids, and people to play with, PvP, all that good stuff. And I actually went back to try SWTOR again for my Should You Play This Game in X Year series that I was doing for a while, and I had a really good time with it. So I'd strongly recommend that video if you want to learn more. But why are we talking about this 10-year-old game right now? Because it's getting its anniversary expansion, The Legacy of Sith, this year in 2022. This is the 8th expansion the game has received in its 10-year timeline. It's pretty incredible. A major update for the game almost every year since its launch. Progressing the story with major characters like the main man himself, Darth Malgus is back, and also updating the combat system in a really interesting way. Normally you'd say pick an Imperial agent, like I did when I first played again recently, and then you'd be able to choose between your 2 advanced classes, your talent trees, that will be the operative or the sniper in that case. At level 10 you get those advanced classes, and that's when you start to unlock your interesting abilities. Now, in Legacy of the Sith, we'll be able to get started on our cool moves from level 1 and not from just those 2 classes. Agent will suddenly be able to choose from not just its own, but also the power tech or mercenary of the bounty hunter classes. That massively changes the way you're going to do your builds. Agents can suddenly have their own abilities and bounty hunter abilities, opening up more variety in the gameplay. Even more interestingly, that also plays into the dark and light story options you make when you're doing the story. You make a good or bad choice and you get a certain rep build up, and that leads also now into being able to unlock abilities from the other faction. You could be unlocking abilities from the trooper or the smuggler as an Imperial agent based on how you're playing the story. That's really cool. I should tell you though, a Force user is going to choose Force using class abilities. So yeah, an Imperial agent is not able to use the Force, so can't pick from those classes. I think it's an awesome update. More great Star Wars story, new places to explore, major combat updates, all coming very soon. But now let's talk about something different. Crimson Desert, which is the follow-up to Black Desert. It's the much more story-focused game from Pearl Abyss, which was revealed back in 2019. Black Desert is to this day one of the most played MMOs out there. No matter what your opinion is on that Korean-made game, it is a unique MMO. Sandbox style, which is hard to do well in my opinion. The combat is extremely satisfying and flashy. You got a lot of classes to choose between. Its character creator is still one of the best out there, and it has a strange setup. It's like an infinite grind game. There's always another power level to achieve. There's always another level to that skill. There's always more money to make. It does it well enough to make for an interesting and satisfying experience. It's pretty unique, but it does have some standout problems as well. Namely the whole pay-to-win debate that's never ending around this game, or how its story was an absolute shambles, told very poorly, without much payoff. You're definitely not playing Black Desert for its story. But what if they took the foundation they built from Black Desert, of a great world, visual style, combat and all that, the deep life skill system, and update it, but then add an actual story that's worth paying attention to and tell it well? That's what they're trying to do with their follow-up game, Crimson Desert. So far, we've had 2 main trailers for the game, which show a familiar world, but at a different time, following the story of this band of mercenaries who are just trying to make it. In the second trailer, we saw a lot more gameplay moments that show some clear, interesting changes to the combat, making it feel a lot more weighty. There's these grapple and combination attacks where you work in unison with your team, or you grab an enemy like a meat shield or tackle and beat them down. It seems the weight of your character versus enemies is going to be really important. I've made multiple videos about Crimson Desert and the details we've seen in the trailers, so definitely check those out if you want to learn more. But for this video, I would say it looks like a more story-focused take on what Pearl Abyss started with Black Desert, trying to address where they went wrong with that stuff and make a more memorable experience with characters and story and maybe better storytelling in general. The trailers make it look good. You know, it's this medieval fantasy world with humans and non-humans living together, visually looking incredible, the combat's looking good, but is it actually an MMO? Originally, yeah, it was certainly said to be one, but they've walked back their official description a bit. Now it's a open world action online adventure game. Why not just call it an MMO? I have to assume that's because they've scaled back the scale of what they're planning. Maybe it's going to work differently to your average MMO. Unfortunately though, we're just sat waiting on important details like that because the release was actually delayed. It was originally planned to release around now, winter 2021. Now it's set sometime 2022. They have been very quiet since that announcement, and we hoped for new information at maybe the Game Awards, but had nothing. So we're left to wonder what's going on with the game, and is it going to happen in 2022? Once again then, time for something different. Let's talk about Guild Wars 2 and its expansion, End of Dragons. This is also releasing in February. Why is this all happening in February? The third expansion to the very popular Guild Wars 2 is releasing after its original delay from 2021. This is going to be a weird one for me to talk about, so I'll keep it tight. I enjoyed Guild Wars 2 when I was playing it originally, when I was like 18 years old working in retail. I have not played the game since, despite a lot of people telling me to try it again. I've missed the 2 major expansions expansions, you know, all the new content and story. And I've even heard that the mount system is literally the best we've ever seen in an MMO, which is quite interesting. Apparently they have abilities and move in interesting ways. Basically, I am long overdue a return to Guild Wars 2, and I kind of think it deserves its own video like the ones I did for ESO, Final Fantasy, or SWTOR. Maybe after its expansion launches, it'll be time for me to try it. Either way, whether you've played it recently or not, it remains one of the most played MMOs in the West. It is loved and respected as a game, and I've only really ever heard good things about it. End of Dragons, the expansion, is meant to add 9 new elite specs to play, the end of the current dragon cycle, which surely means something important. There's a whole new continent with 3 major zones to go explore. I think they're adding fishing for the first time. Did it genuinely not have fishing? But TLDR, there's a lot of new stuff being added, obviously, and it seems like a good time for that community who loves the game. So I ask you guys, is Guild Wars 2 something I should check out? Or should I wait maybe for the expansion and try after that? Obviously, I know very little about it to this day, but it deserved to be in this video all the same. Finally then, our last MMO I want to talk about for 2022, Blue Protocol. All too recently, I made a video asking what happened to that game. You see, I've been covering the game for almost 2 years, having played its original beta, followed its major updates and reveals all the way. We're talking about a Sword Art Online feeling MMO. Published by Bandai Namco, this MMORPG has this beautiful visual style that is very anime-esque in its world or characters, the storytelling style. And then you've got this really cool action combat where you're aiming your attacks carefully, weaving in combos and abilities. The world is full of these things called Imogen. They're like magical creatures of many shapes and sizes. And when you defeat them like a boss, you can then work to summon it yourself to help you, making it part of your kit no matter what class you are. You can have one that provides healing, one that provides buffs, elemental damage, or do big bursts or stuns. They have all these interesting uses, and that lets you make all these different builds. There's actually only 5 classes to start with though. The Spellcaster, the Blast Archer for your range types, and then you've got like the Melee, which is the Heavy Smasher, the Aegis Fighter, and finally the Twin Striker. Each class has their own talent trees that modify all of your abilities. So you pick certain abilities based on what you want, and then you adapt them further in various ways to change how they work, making yourself a healing archer build, or maybe lean into lightning magic as the Spellcaster, that type of thing. And ever since I saw the original trailer, I thought this game looked really promising. Since I played the beta, I've definitely been hooked on it, just kind of waiting forever for any major information. During that, we've seen new zones they're working on, stories and character reveals, new cities, massive combat and class updates, and of course the introduction to the Heavy Smasher itself. But we're still waiting on proper news for release and global launch information. It was said that it was originally planned for 2021 vaguely, and obviously that hasn't happened, and it's actually been a few months since we've had any real updates from the team. Right now, we're expecting news on that front soon. They've been working with Smilegate and Kaini Tech to launch the game in Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau, despite their original plans to only release in Japan. We cannot expect a Western launch until the original launch happens though, which we're hoping is 2022. Maybe we could be playing it in late 2022, if not on Western servers. But if you'd like to learn more about Blue Protocol, I've made tons of videos on it, so just search our channel for all that. But there you have it, my big discussion on the 5 MMOs I'm looking at in 2022, those major updates, the full releases, or expected release. Let me know your thoughts on it all. Do you think we're going to get major Blue Protocol or even Crimson Desert news? Are you a Guild Wars or SWTOR fan? Or like myself, Cotton and Rage, are you going to be playing Lost Ark at its launch? Let me know. For now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.